Welcome back to the Geneva All-Member Meeting. We are going into our next session now, which is why the insurance industry benefits from standard vehicle data. We have the pleasure of hearing from three very great speakers today and people who are well-founded in the insurance area and at the edges of insurance and vehicle data. And I'm going to do a quick introduction and then hand it over to the speakers one at a time. Our first speaker is Fouad Husseini, the founder of the Open Insurance Think Tank. We've been working with Fouad and his organization to establish a formal liaison agreement with the Geneva Alliance, and we're happy to say that that's progressing, and we look forward to technology teams working together on the combination of vehicle data and insurance data. Following Fouad, we'll hear from Mario Ortegan Cabrera, who's the Senior Program Manager at Microsoft Azure Mobility. And also Microsoft, of course, is quite involved in the Digital Twin Consortium. And so we'll look forward to hearing from Mario from a Microsoft perspective. And then finally, we'll hear from Kevin Valdek, who's the CTO of High Mobility. Kevin has been quite engaged in leading actually our Cloud and Connected Services project and has been a frequent presenter at Geneva events and activities. And so we'll look forward to hearing from him as well. The idea today is that vehicle data standards can influence not only the automotive industry, but also adjacent industries like the insurance industry. And so today we'll hear three perspectives on that today. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Fouad and ask you to take the ball, Fouad, and look forward to hearing what you have to say today.
Thank you, Steve. It's good to see that open insurance is now a regular topic on the agendas of even non-fintech events. And to me, this is probably the 57th webinar in 2.5 years since founding the Open Insurance, what started as the Open Insurance Initiative back in 2018. So having spent 2 years of my life in underwriting, reinsurance, and operations, I have obviously my own vision of where the best future lies for the insurance industry. So in today's webinar, I've chosen to speak about the why, what, and how open insurance is going to be a force to reckon with in defining the functionality of the platform ecosystems to come. By way of an update, Open, which was the Open Insurance Initiative, has become more than a standard setting organization, and it has transformed into a think tank leading the design, alignment, and also the exploration of use cases and building developer playgrounds. For those that work in the innovation management world, they would probably recognize that the days of a single organization building and owning almost everything are ending. Now, this is driven by the emergence of platforms that can efficiently connect demand with supply. So they generate network effects, and that allows them to extend their ecosystems to neighboring ones. So I'm a firm believer that in the future, no individual company will possess all of the resources or capabilities needed to compete against these ever-expanding platforms. Of course, insurance markets are not immune, and for almost a decade now, VCs and investors have pumped billions of dollars to create niche businesses, new business models, and better fintech-enabled marketplaces. From the smallest of startups to the largest institutions, data access and obviously more importantly, data usage has to be the single most defining factor in developing connected insurance and AI-tailored solutions. But that's not quite possible today, unfortunately. So, and you need to consider that in the insurance industry, only 32% of the data collected by insurers is being put to work. So that's a whopping 68% that goes unleveraged. Policymakers and regulators recognized the role of data mobility could play, and for more than a decade now, we've seen many initiatives. These aim to unlock the economic and social value of the data held by government agencies. In the EU and the UK, this has extended to force the banking sector to share access to customer data with third parties. Policymakers obviously saw big opportunities in empowering consumers and, again, forcing banks to compete with fintech innovators. To date, the insurance market has largely remained untouched by policymakers, but that's changing very quickly. The FCA, which is the Financial Conduct Authority in the UK, and the European Insurance and Occupational Pensions Authorities, and even the UN are now exploring the feasibility, opportunities, and risks of open insurance and extended open finance. So from within the insurance industry, you could see that there's been action as well. Open, like I said, was set up in 2018 as an industry-led project. And more recently, we've seen Lloyd's also take a similar approach in defining data and its scope through its core data record project. We've actually contributed or are contributing to all of the 4 projects you see towards the right of this slide. But of course, data is not is only one side of the story. Competition to dominate the customer interface could upend the insurance market, and we only have to watch how Apple and Google have unbundled the driving experience. Now, I have absolutely nothing against either of those tech giants, but let's have a look at how Apple has leveraged its platform. Now, if you realize that Apple can now actually control the customer interface inside and outside of the car. In fact, Apple's CarPlay is now available in 90% of cars sold in the US. And it started with the infotainment system and lately implemented a digital key for car access control through its digital wallet. Apple is investing in EV batteries, autonomous driving. It's developing its own powertrain, and rumors has it that it will launch its own Apple Car as well. For me, the striking thing about Apple's supremacy of the customer interface is actually its participation in industry alliances, such as the Car Connectivity Consortium and the Zigbee IoT Alliance. Obviously, to develop open standards. In my earliest white papers, I had discussed the importance of open standards in generating positive network effects. So that's something we're trying to convince the insurance markets to adopt. Open standards will be crucial for insurers to match the value migration happening, which, as a matter of fact, was accelerated by the pandemic. And that's where we come in as an organization developing open standards. And there are 2 main components. The first is the development of a common data standard for sharing access to customer data and sharing anonymized and aggregated data. I will expand a little on this a bit later in my presentation. The second main component will be the development of an open API specification. We will be adopting widely used solutions for API architecture, data formats, authentication, and authorization frameworks. As I explained earlier, open is an industry-led initiative, so it relies on its community in developing almost everything it does. And this obviously includes standards. On top of that, members could actually lead opens projects, or they could launch own projects and invite other members to join. Members also collaborate in preparing collective response to consultations and calls for inputs from regulators and policymakers. And one important pillar for open is the setup of local working groups. These are administratively and financially independent entities to build local open communities. And they tailor, obviously they will get involved in tailoring data and API standards to comply with local supervision and regulatory compliance. And they will organize forums and workshops. Actually, in February, we launched the first working group, and we're in discussions, and that was in Italy. And we're in discussions with potential partners in Holland, Germany, and South Africa. To date, we've built a community of almost 300 institutions and startups. And I think since January of this year, we've launched 13 projects. Some have been completed and others are ongoing, and they include extensions to the data model to include all lines of business, data alignment projects, development of MVPs, proof of concepts, one-click underwriting, and a few others. And we're currently in the middle of launching 2 internal study groups to run the growing list of projects in mobility, cyber, legal, and compliance research. And I'm sure Steve will be happy to learn that last week we've actually launched the mobility working group, and the tech lead for the group will be the head of platform at Covéa Insurance, which is a 200-year-old French incumbent insurer. And we will be starting with introductions to yourselves and the tech lead at W3C, hopefully next week. To get you all quickly up to speed of where we are with projects that I mentioned, well, 2021 was a year of achievements for us. We've published the Open Insurance Blueprint last Feb. This document defined the approach we're taking in developing the data and API standards, and a call for comment accompanied the release of the blueprint to give other experts beyond our community a chance to make a contribution. And I know I mentioned this already. We've launched a working group in Italy. G2, a well-known startup accelerator in Milan, leads and administers the activities of the group. And for the first time in the industry, they will be building a developer playground to test out ideas in mobility, smart living, and health tech, using our standards, obviously, as a reference implementation. Another significant achievement was joining forces with Genevieve and W3C to align our data standards and develop MVPs and proof of concepts. We will be actually extending our partnership ecosystem to other open standards alliances in cyber, smart cities, health, etc., while obviously developing the data and API standards for the remaining lines of business. So there are good reasons for this from interoperability perspectives. What you see here is a representation of Open's data standard, risk carriers, because they hold and control access to customer data, are at the top of the tree. We took a modular approach in how we define the groups of data properties. An insurer transacts a range of insurance products. These could include pet, trade credit, and motor insurance. The motor insurance data model is represented in terms of driver, vehicle, and coverage. Now, if we stop at this stage, that would be fine. And we would have a data standard that any insurance operator or distributor could adapt to their use case. But that's not our approach. We'd rather have a standard that makes it incredibly easy for developers to experiment and develop new applications on top of insurance APIs. And that's the reason for our partnership with Genevieve and W3C, which will see us aligning our standards. Now, in practice, this would allow any mobility developer using the Genevieve standards to swiftly integrate insurance solutions and vice versa. Insurance operators would be able to incorporate real-time data from vehicle sensors into their applications. Now, I don't want to get technical. What you see is very conceptual, and that's what will become the resultant data model incorporating the common vehicle interface developed by our partners. So this is how we intend to achieve interoperability. Finally, developing use cases at a global and industrial scale is what we're driving at here. Vehicle data, when coupled with vehicle service definitions and insurance claims data, can produce great business value to OEMs and their suppliers. Even before third-party insurance applications are considered, we could develop a tech stack and in and out of vehicle abstraction layers to make it easier for embedding insurance products or the activation and deactivation of insurance solutions. Likewise, OEM data could support insurers with behavioral-based pricing for new transportation modes, or could develop apps to help motorists drive smarter and safer. And there may be opportunities to contribute to global reduction of CO2 emissions and help green tech initiatives. For us at Open, it's also another way of engaging our members with vehicle OEMs and their suppliers with InsurTech and risk carriers. Steve, I'll stop here. As always, happy to connect with anyone interested in more information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fuad. Appreciate that input and very good, very helpful presentation. And now we're going to move to our third presenter, who is Kevin Valdek, CTO at High Mobility. So Kevin, hopefully you have the ball and can control the slides. We look forward to your presentation.
Yes, thanks, Steve. Hi, everyone. So my name is Kevin Valdek. I'm the CTO of High Mobility. I will speak about a bit about the available data that's available for insurance market. It's coming from different OEMs and that's available through telematic systems. But before that, I will just briefly introduce myself. I am, or from where I'm coming from, in High Mobility. So we're a data marketplace and neutral server operating at the moment in Europe. And it's our business to kind of work with OEMs to kind of get data that's interesting for third parties, especially for insurance companies, and then kind of make a simple kind of API and also business framework to work with that data. So why the insurance market is so important for us, or as a data marketplace, or in general for working with telematics data, it's pretty simple. And I think we're seeing good examples in the previous two talks and also from the opening keynote from Christoph at Geotab. The insurance business is a large industry that already is kind of used to working with, of course, vehicles and different types of data coming from vehicles. So we have, of course, identified different types of industry that are interested in data. Also, the OEMs know that there are different kind of industries that are interested in data. But all the time when we come to standardization talks, or when we come to kind of new kind of initiatives, even regulation, when it comes to vehicle data that is being discussed, it's quite often that the insurance companies are somewhere there at the front and taking part of these discussions, because they deal with a lot of vehicles. The insurance companies, they are already used to working with APIs in order to do cost calculations of different vehicles, also when there are different accidents, about repair estimates and what that can cost. So it's in somewhat an industry that is quite used to data and has pretty high standards in what they expect from getting data. On the other hand, on the data maker side, so the OEMs, as we have seen, we know that almost every vehicle that is being sold, at least in Europe and also North America, is already connected. For one, to provide convenience features to their customers, but also for safety aspects. I mean, having e-call or emergency call plugged into the vehicle is necessary. And that also leads to built-in connectivity from the start and not really as an optional package as it has been previously. So of course, the problems that also we from High Mobility have identified is quite general or quite broad to what we have seen being discussed here in the Geneva project and also in the previous talks. It's really that there's a lot of fragmentation, of course, and it's not really a surprise because somewhat it is a new market, even though yes, telematics data and diagnostics data has been available on different levels. At the same time, where all vehicles are connected, data is being provided at scale, and data is also being opened up to new industries. That's still quite something new and something that is on its way to reach its potential, but still in the quite early days. And the fragmentations that we're seeing is, of course, in general, different technical platforms, different data sets that are being provided using different data protocols, also update rates, and how often is data being updated, how fresh is the data, what does it cost in the end for the insurance companies to access this data. All of these things are being taken into account by different insurance businesses when they are considering integrating with telematics data. Of course, the OEMs are tackling these problems. We have organizations tackling with these problems, and companies and marketplaces, neutral servers, are also tackling this problem. And it's quite easy to understand because it is a real life problem. If you simplify these things, you basically can get third parties and insurance companies to adopt the car data or telematics data in the end. And you can also get then the drivers to start to adopt these type of services because they can see the clear benefit in sharing their data. And also they have a selection of different kind of service provider who provides, for instance, an insurance service. So we know about these problems, just to kind of summarize it. But what I wanted to kind of talk a bit more is what is really then possible today. I mean, we have data that's coming from vehicles manufacturers already, from many brands that have launched in different markets. So if we now go beyond the kind of diagnostics port, we go beyond additional hardware that has to be installed into the vehicle and really look at, okay, what data is available, what data can be accessed for different insurance companies, what type of products. And so we have identified 4 key kind of insurance products that are live today that can be used. And one is enhanced insurance. We have pay how you drive insurance, pay as you drive insurance, and first notification of loss that are really the kind of main pillars. Of course, you can go into more finer details on each of these branches separately. So to go through those one by one, starting with pay as you drive, perhaps the most simplest kind of API product for insurance businesses that's on the market. It's really about getting the odometer value and also for some cases getting the GPS data. So only by having this data, it's already possible to see how often this vehicle is being driven. So these insurance products exist already. There are many companies that have been live since early days, not only incumbents, but even startups and so on who are providing these type of services. And from the early days, it was more like, send us a picture of your odometer once a month. And based on that, you pay a premium. Of course, that's a very inconvenient process for the driver to take the picture and send it in. Second step was also that they provide a OBD dongle, so it can be plugged in. But if they get the odometer value, even just once a month, that's a pretty simple API that already enables a digital insurance product that can be used. But the pay as you drive is sometimes said to be not quite enough, of course, because it just provides some data, but it doesn't tell too much about the vehicle state. And many insurance companies, they want to know much more because if the more they know about the vehicle, and of course, the more the driver or the owner of the vehicle is willing to share, the better price they can actually give because they understand better of how the vehicle is being used. So enhanced insurance kind of API product that's on the market. It's more about also getting to know about the warning lights of the vehicle, understanding the different kind of diagnostics or maintenance data about the vehicle as well. So not only getting the monthly mileage, but understanding also what type of problems the vehicle might be in. So if there's a lot of warning lights coming on frequently, if there are different type of a kind of engine oil level or engine state is in a bad shape and so on, this type can be identified. And already by this type of knowledge, which maybe is fetched once per day, it's already possible to give a bit more better estimates how the vehicle is being driven, and at the end also giving a better price to the insured person. First notification or first notice of loss or first notification of loss, also an interesting kind of API product. It's not much about the kind of monthly premium, but it's more when an accident happens or when a breakdown happens. So there are different kind of webhooks that can be subscribed to see if there is an accident. So even if there's a small bump that on the vehicle, for instance, if the vehicle is making on a parking lot, maybe drives into something, nothing dramatic, but of course the airbag is not triggered, it's possible to get this type of accident webhook or notification that this happened. This also applies to, for instance, breakdown calls. So if there's some kind of breakdown on the vehicle, it's also possible for the insurance company to subscribe to that event. So if that event comes in, they can directly get in touch with the customer and say, oh, you had a breakdown or you have a small accident, let us take care of it. And in some cases, for some OEMs, it's also possible to see what is the impact level or impact type. So you can see that actually there was something on the front of the vehicle, at the back, and if it was something that minor or something severe. So it's also possible to get to know really what happened with the vehicle. And otherwise, the insurance companies typically, of course, would need to ask for pictures, maybe even send a mechanic or a professional to inspect the vehicle. And all of these things obviously cost a lot of money and takes a lot of time, maybe weeks to get an appointment. So by moving that to the digital world, there's a lot of interest, of course, from insurance companies, and more OEMs are opening these type of events. Apart from the accidents, there's also typically emergency events that are part of this kind of data package, and those emergency events provide information if there's really an accident for e-call, so the emergency services are called. Of course, it's not a substitute for the e-call itself. Of course, the first responders will be there, but it's also possible then for the insurance company to directly be aware of that something happened with the vehicle, and they can act on it. And the last insurance product I wanted to highlight is Pay How You Drive. Also, I think quite familiar for most of you. This is more really the most advanced case of all the insurance cases we are seeing and working with, and it's really about getting, in some cases, second-by-second updates about the acceleration of the vehicle, even how if there's even blind spot warnings and all of these type of events. So really to create a high fidelity profile of how the vehicle is being driven, and also if there would happen something to the vehicle. So these type of events are much more advanced. Of course, it requires much more kind of data analysis than if you compare to the Pay As You Drive, which is just the mileage of the vehicle. But these type of insurance product is really what's needed for the insurance industry to start to adopt this, because we see that the insurance companies, of course, want to get as much data as possible, and they're already used to working with additional hardware or OBD dongles. So the most important part here is that have some kind of standardization also on the data scope or the data products that are offered by the OEMs, as not only having the technical feasibility, but the business feasibility. If there is just one OEM that provides Pay How You Drive, it's difficult to get insurance companies to start to adopt it. If there are 3-4 major brands providing the similar data set with similar data quality, it's of course much easier for an industry to adopt it, and especially so for the insurance industry, because really at the end of the day, they really need scale in the amount of vehicles that can be accessed. So with that, I stop this short intro. What I wanted to also highlight is that below each of these tables, you can see an Airtable link. So when you download the slides now or later, they are definitely shared. You can also click on the link to see the full data set. So in these images I just have, or in these slides, I just have some previews of how that looks like. With that, I'll hand over back to you, Steve, and happy to jump into the panel discussion.
That's great. Thank you, Kevin. Very well done, all of you. And so welcome back. And we're going to move now into a small set of questions. We had a little bit of a late start due to technical reasons. And so we'll be going over a few minutes, but we wanted to highlight a couple of questions for the panelists to comment on. So the first one is why should automotive OEMs collaborate on insurance offerings rather than going on their own? And so I think, Mario, I think maybe you had a comment on that, and feel free, any of the other panelists, to chime in on that question.
Well, there is a lot of reasons. For sure, the OEMs control the data sources, and that is a fact, and it will become even more the case in the future. However, to build an insurance ecosystem requires a lot of knowledge, and knowledge that the OEMs do not necessarily have right now. So, okay, you understand how the vehicle moves, but you have to convert that into risk maneuvers, if you will, or risky behavior. And then you have to convert that into risk score, and then you have to understand how that translates into insurance policy. So creating all of this value chain in order to have from vehicle data all of the way to providing a service or a product to a customer is something that requires a lot of knowledge that you have to build, or knowledge that you have to get by partnering. Personally, my opinion is partnering is even better than trying to reinvent the wheel.
Great. Kevin, Fuad, any comments on that question?
Yeah, I think collaboration will become quite important in the future, and I think it will be the way forward. Well, actually, not the way forward, but the only way forward is for OEMs and insurance companies and others in adjacent ecosystems to collaborate in developing new products and solutions. Obviously, the concept of composability will attract a lot of interest. Now, that requires standardization of data and APIs. Composability means, the ability to be able to integrate different services and solutions through APIs to generate, one uniform product that probably the customer is not aware of that happening, but that's the effect and the power of composability that's reinforced by standardized data across different open standards, which will allow all these different players to interact and interoperate together. And that's what we're actually driving at as a think tank.
Yeah, and I'm also adding into it, I'm trying to always look at it from the driver perspective, or in the end, the OEM customer perspective. And of course, great offering from the OEM to be able to provide all the full chain by the vehicle, or provide the vehicle, also the insurance products. But the choice for the customers is really great if they can really select any type of insurance product. And if you look at the big markets, of course, the OEMs can go ahead and implement different products that they see fit for large markets. But always there are specializations in different countries, different regions, where you need to have local know-how, and that's not really possible from, so to speak, the mothership. So in the end, the quality of the services to the drivers will be lacking unless it's really open for any insurance provider to get access to the data and really offer that to the driver in the end.
Okay, great. Here's another question. What's keeping both automotive and insurance companies from creating new products based on available vehicle data?
Okay, I'll talk about the insurance companies. Okay, so today, 32% of the data collected, like I mentioned before, is utilized. So, a whopping 68% goes unleveraged. And there are reasons for this. I mean, it could be the quality of data that's being collected or has been collected, legacy systems, or not having enough talent around to actually make use and utilize that data. And insurers really need to be on innovation platforms, and developers need developer resources and playgrounds to experiment with data. And those same developers need data to develop their AI systems. And insurers also need to understand how their actuarial systems could be complemented by external data. So it's a new world of discovery, which will only work when data is standardized across the insurance ecosystem and other adjacent ecosystems in a way to allow this exchange of data. And in a recent study, it showed that insurers now attach the same weight to external data as it does to internal data. And I think in the future, external data will become even more valuable to insurance companies because they'll be relying more on real-time data to actually develop real-time underwriting systems.
Okay. Other comments?
Yeah, I can maybe add a little bit of a perspective that I already mentioned partially in my presentation. So vehicles are complex machines and they have an engineering history, which means that as you develop your vehicle lines, you first worry about getting them connected, and then you have to worry about collecting the right data to build your use cases from the point of view of the OEM. That takes a while because the vehicle development life cycles are long today. They are becoming shorter, but they are still long. So because of the humongous variability of vehicles and vehicle models and data that you can collect, as long as you are not able to standardize the data that you collect and present, it becomes quite difficult to build products in general, specifically insurance products. So I have hopes for the CV interface initiative to help everybody in the ecosystem to have a common description of the vehicle, so these kind of use cases can be connected easier to other partners in the ecosystem.
Yeah, and perhaps not the most exciting topic, but I mean, data protection is also part of it. I mean, if we distinguish a bit between B2C and B2B, or if let's say in other terms for individual car owners compared to fleet owners and fleet operators, then I think the OEMs, they are really concerned about the data, the privacy basically of their customers. And in the end, even if they are not at fault and data is being available or shared and it's being misused, it's a large risk that it comes back to the OEMs. And of course, the customers have typically a very big belief in the brands they are using and they trust these brands. So the cautiousness a bit on the OEM side is definitely also because even though they can implement it correctly with all the data protection laws and regulations, they still want to go an extra step to make sure that the drivers don't consent to share something they perhaps shouldn't, although it's their vehicle, so they decide in the end. So that type of cautiousness also plays into play. When it comes to fleets and fleet operators, it's a bit of a different scenario because it's more, it's really the fleet owner who controls it in a different way. And so I think that we will see the most kind of data product innovation on the fleet side at first, and then coming more into the B2C sector a bit over a longer period of time.
Thank you for that. One last question before we close, and it's related to what you were just talking about, Kevin. What are the hurdles to consumers accepting vehicle data-driven insurance products? And will concerns over data privacy limit adoption, or what are some of the other potential barriers to adoption by consumers consuming insurance products that are data-driven?
Yeah, I think.
No?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Fuad. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this is quite similar to the hurdles that open banking had when it started. So I think the biggest hurdle seems to be for consumers to understand the value exchange that happens by allowing access to their data and realizing that it is a trade-off for better discounts, to gain better coverage, or to receive elevated levels of service and convenience. So consumers' trust can be reinforced by dispelling their fears of data being hacked, or of internet fraud, cyber attacks, and viruses. So we need to reinforce the notion of secure data management. And consumers should always have the ability to be able to opt in and opt out of having the data shared. And you know, there's also culture also plays a big role here. For example, 60% of Chinese consumers are willing to share the data. And if you contrast that with the French market, only 9% of consumers are happy to do that. So also cultures could play a big role in this.
Yeah, definitely. And if I would add a comment there too, is that I personally, I don't see also that the consumer side is the blocking end of it. As long as they can see the value of sharing data, they will be more happy in doing so. And for personalized vehicle data, where there's kind of active consent for a specific sharing of data to a specific service provider, it's probably not the bottleneck on the consumer side. It's more of a bottleneck of getting the kind of industries to really adopt car data at scale in order to get that data from the OEMs. And just a good example of that is that there are basically consumers using already these type of services, but in many cases it works on aftermarket hardware boxes and so on. So even though it's very cumbersome to install these things, consumers are still doing it in some level, at least the early adopters, because they can see the benefit. But if we remove all that friction, it will be even simpler.
To finalize, from our point of view, Microsoft is an organization that runs on trust. We take the whole topic of data privacy very, very seriously. I mean, for me, the most important topic is to have always transparency towards the final user, how the data is stored, how the data is used, what is it going to be used for, a very clear consent in language that the user can understand, because sometimes it's hidden away somewhere in the contract, which is not the kind of thing that we want to create. So consent from the user is critical, transparency is critical.
Great, good comments, thank you all. Well, I think we need to close on this panel today. Thank you, Mario, Kevin, and Fuad for your great inputs and insights. We appreciate it greatly. We're looking forward to additional conversations as we move forward into this insurance space, and we're glad that Geneva is in the center of it. Happy to be there and looking forward to working with each of you.